Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Kamen Entchev here with Tom Casselman. Ready for a huge show today? We go over some of the 0-2 teams that were in the playoffs last year. Who's toast? Is anyone coming back and making the playoffs? Chargers, Bengals, Vikings in among that group. Some surprise 2-0 teams on the other side. Bucks, Saints, Commanders, Falcons. Who's making the playoffs there? Plus, let's talk about what team has been the best 2 weeks in. Most impressive team. Cowboys, looking great. 49ers, of course, looking great. My adopted team this year, baby. AFC championship bound Miami Dolphins looking really good. The big dogs looking great, but who has been the best, Tom? That'll be fun to talk about. One thing we've actually very briefly talked about on the show, which is unlike most of the other fans and national media as a whole, I thought it was time to start talking a little prime time on the show today. Deion Sanders, what he's doing at Colorado, it's been just a crazy, crazy start, 3-0. But now they've got their biggest test of the season. CU is actually a 21-point underdog against the Oregon Ducks, who have been just hammering everyone they've played. We'll briefly touch on that, of course. And then another huge college football game this weekend, Ohio State and Notre Dame, as blue blood as it gets on Saturday. Going to be a lot of fun talking that. We have ourselves our betting locks of the week, sports trivia, statements of the week, which might talk about Mahomes' new contract. Show Mahomes the money, baby. Money Mahomes. Didn't have it in the rundown. I was like, you know what? I'm going to cover this in statements. So I'll touch on that near the end of the show, but I know I gave it away, Tom. I'm sorry. I gave away my statement, but cannot wait to get started. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. I mean, I think we're going to have a first where I'm going to be using trivia to meld right into my statement of the week. I don't know if we've ever done that before, so looking forward to that near the end of the show as well.
I was going to do it last week, but we had to cut it short a little.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a
Tua
time crunch
trivia,
there.
the 4-0 against Belichick. That was my trivia, and then it led right into my statement.
5-0, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of the NFL, like you said, let's start with a little bit of panic button territory.
Your teams, Tom.
Particularly
teams.
for somebody who okay, so I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit.
Okay.
The year was 2013, about 10 years ago.
Oh, here we go.
I don't remember why I said this or thought this or what my reasoning was, because 2013 was junior year college for me.
That was 10 years ago, Tom. How old are we getting?
And on I put this on Facebook back when I was like, hey, let me just put out NFL predictions on Facebook just because. And you found it as a memory or whatever. And I picked the Houston Texans to win the Super Bowl. They went 2-14 that year. I certainly hope that this is not some sort of 10-year Casselman curse on the Cincinnati Bengals, as they have started 0-2 after I picked them to be not just winning their division,
winning the whole thing,
not just winning the conference, not having the best record in the conference, winning the entire flipping Super Bowl. But they're starting out 0-2. My Chargers, which I picked as a little bit needle, but I'm not. I'm going to stand. I'm going to put my feet in the ground on this one. I stood by and stand by picking the Chargers on merit. And then the Vikings,
Casselman curse and Chargers curse.
The Vikings, who last season 13-4. But they were 11-0 or something like that in one possession games. Now we've got that regression monster kind of leaping up to bite them, as they are 0-2 in single possession games so far this season. So let's focus on Chargers, Vikings, Bengals, all 0-2. Kamen, will any of these teams regroup and make it to the playoffs this year? For me, I'm not going to get into specifics, I think 2 out of 3 are going to be solid. I'll let you figure out which 2 you think that's going to be.
Wow. Talk about sticking to your guns, Tom Casselman. To be fair, I'll give you a hard time. You've got 2 of your big teams, Bengals and Chargers, looking bad. I had the Vikings winning the division too. So, and I did have the Bengals winning the division. So, everyone had the Bengals as a really good team this year. You, though, did put the Chargers as the AFC West champs, which, I was very, very against. Chiefs Kingdom, what can I say? But it's interesting. I'll give you a couple numbers. You know how much I love statistics. And this is, I mean, a lot of times I say numbers in the past are meaningless. Like when talking about a franchise, which in theory, charging should be meaningless, but it probably isn't because this team, no matter what Staley says in his press conference, the Jaguar game last year may have carried over. But this is a stat that does matter, I would say, because it shows you how hard it is to make the playoffs. Since 1990, only 31 out of 270 teams that started 0-2 have made the playoffs. That is just over 11%. So the odds say that none of these three teams should make it, but I think it's going to be one or two. So, I mean, I'm still going to say the Vikings have the best chance, Tom, because they play in the NFC. It's the weakest conference in football. Bears are 0-2. They might be the worst team in the NFL. Packers are 1-1, lost to the Falcons. I know Green Bay had some injuries. They could have won that game, but they're not necessarily amazing. We spent all this time talking about how bad the NFC South is. Well, the NFC South is beating up on the NFC North early this season. The Bucs beat up on the Bears, double-digit win. So I'm starting to think the NFC North might be the worst division in football. So the Vikings have not played a single division game yet. They could easily be 1-1, if not 2-0, if not for some fumbles. And fumbles are kind of fluky. I mean, they are somewhat correctable. I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're going to fumble as much as they have the first 2 weeks. It's like, multiple fumbles 2 games in a row. That's very rare for NFL teams. But a lot of it depends on this Chargers-Vikings game, the 0-2 showdown. This is one of the bigger 0-2 matchups, I can remember seeing. Because, I think it's 0-3 is too tough. I think the winner of the Vikings-Chargers game still has a shot. You go 0-3, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to pick Minnesota to win this game. They're at home. They were really good in close games last year. I think Chargers, I saw a stat. They were actually 7-5 in one-score games last year, but they're 0-2 this year. They lost in the playoffs. In recent memory, the Chargers in one-score games do not deliver. The Vikings did last year in that scenario. It's a new year, but there's some crazy numbers on the Chargers, Tom. 58 points, no turnovers, 0-2. Their defense, which does have some talent, is abysmal. They couldn't stop Tyreek Hill to save their lives. How are they going to stop Justin Jefferson? They're going to have no answer for him. It's the same thing, the 2 best receivers in football. He couldn't stop the cheetah. Good luck stopping Jay Jettas. So I'm going to pick Minnesota over the Chargers this week. By that merit, the Chargers are out for me. They'll be 0-3. Vikings 1-2. At worst, only 1 game back in the North, if not tied for first. So on the flip side, though, if the Chargers win, they get closer to 50-50 for me. Obviously that game is I'm by no means convinced Minnesota's winning. I'm probably not going to bet on the game. It's not in my locks of the week, but it's just my gut feeling. The Chargers defense has not stopped anybody. How are they going to stop, maybe the best receiver in football? As for the Bengals, they're an interesting team. I think they're 0-2 because Joe Burrow's not healthy.
Yeah.
I think this is their season, this game against the Rams. And is Burrow going to play? Is he not going to play? If he plays, how healthy is he? Because same deal, if they start 0-3, they're toast. However, if they can beat the Rams, which is crazy to think about, this is a rematch of the Super Bowl just 2 years ago, by the way. Their next 2 games, Tom, are the Titans and Cardinals, which are very, very winnable games. So they can go from 0-2 to 3-2, and all of a sudden they're back on the right track. So it really depends on this game, and it kind of sounds like a cop-out because I don't really know, because I don't know what's going to happen with Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow is out for this game, or if Joe Burrow is, compromised a lot, I would lean the Rams. If Joe Burrow somehow has some sort of magical treatment and figures it out, I would lean the Bengals. Again, a game that I am staying away from personally. I won't be betting this game. So I lean they're out just because it's 0-2. But I think I look at it, Vikings are 50-50 to me. I lean in. I think the Bengals are 50-50. I lean out. Whereas the Chargers, I'm a little bit more confident. I'm more of on that 2/3. They're probably toast. But all three of these teams obviously have potential. All three of these teams, as we've seen, I mean, if you think about the history of football, these organizations are not winners. I mean, the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl. The Bengals, I don't think have ever won a Super Bowl either.
I don't think so. No.
And the Rams, they have won, but they've also had some very, very bad years somewhere in between. Or not the Rams, the
Chargers. Yeah,
the Chargers. The Chargers have never won a Super Bowl either. So we're talking about three teams who found themselves in the playoffs, which again, it's all in the past. But is it really? Is it really when it comes to these three organizations? So I'd say my best bet says 1 out of 3 get in, maybe 2. If I had to pick the 1, I would pick the Vikings, even though I probably, if I had to pick the worst team of the 3, I would probably say it is the Vikings, but they also play in the worst conference, in the worst division of the 3. And obviously Austin Eckler's health, another big concern for the Chargers. How healthy is he going to be?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm almost like completely flipped. I mean, there's a reason why I picked the Green Bay Packers to win the division. There's a reason why in my wildcard teams, I didn't pick the Minnesota Vikings, and nothing that they've shown me to this point says that starting out 0-2 at even more of a disadvantage than 0-0, that all of a sudden I'm going to be more confident in them making the playoffs. They have some great individual talent. They have some great skill position players, but they are down on their offensive line. With a couple of injuries across the board. And this is a sort of thing where with the Minnesota Vikings, if I'm like reading whispers from different reporters and different pundits kind of like speculating a little bit that maybe that maybe the Vikings might look into doing that sort of thing. You know, like
by the way, he's played great. That's the reason to believe in them. He has played great. There's some stats where he's on pace for like, was it over 5,000 yards, like 50 something touchdown passes? He's that's the reason to believe. He's played great.
He's played great. And, you know, teams already this season, I mean, with Aaron Rodgers going down, like injuries are only going to keep piling up, unfortunately. And really quickly, I know this isn't in the rundown. Speedy recovery for Nick Chubb. I was driving on Monday night, so I was listening to the game. Kevin Harlan, Kurt Warner, fantastic duo.
I love those guys.
I'm a squeamish guy. But even just hearing it through the radio, I felt deeply, deeply uncomfortable. So definitely speedy recovery for Nick Chubb. Regardless of, you know, football career, I know that's a decision that he's going to have to make, but just, you know, regular person, good health to him going forward. Sorry, I digress. But
no, you're right. Good call.
With Kirk Cousins and the Vikings, like I don't see the Bengals or the Chargers contemplating making any of these franchise-altering moves. With the Vikings, it's on the table. And I do think they play in a poor division, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to float to the top of it. I think that the Packers can be very solid.
It's going to happen.
I think that the Lions are going to be solid. The Bears, I don't know. I'll talk about that later.
The Bears are done.
For the Bengals,
I'm done with the Bears.
I mean, for the Bengals and for the Chargers in the AFC, I mean, I'm not a believer in the LA or the Las Vegas Raiders. Negative 27-point differential. They're atop the division right now. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're getting into the swing of things. I think they're ultimately going to be fine. The Denver Broncos,
they're done.
You know, I don't know about
they're done. Their defense was bad. They're not clutch. Denver's in the cellar for me in the West. I had it preseason. They're in the cellar right now.
Yeah.
They'll finish in the cellar.
Yeah. I mean, like we talked about how competitive the AFC is for making the playoffs this year. And the reason why I still have the Chargers and the Bengals still in this playoff race, not necessarily for division, but still making the playoffs, is because those are two of the teams that are in there competitively. And looking at the split, looking at the tiers of, okay, where's the drop off? I mean, if the Raiders and the Broncos are already out in the AFC West, only one team likely is making it out of the AFC South, because I'm not a believer in the Colts, the Titans, or the Jaguars, really.
Sure,
I mean, one of them's going to win the division. I don't know if any of them are going to get wild card. Like Patriots are 0-2. The Jets have Zach Wilson starting at quarterback. They're not great. Pittsburgh hasn't really looked good. The Browns beat up on the Bengals, but then they didn't really look good against Pittsburgh. What I'm saying is that there's still plenty of opportunity.
Look, one of them can make it. I think though, Tom, for me, the Bills and Dolphins, one of those is getting a wild card.
Sure.
And I actually think the Steelers got a shot. The Steelers' offense has looked abysmal, but they have such a good defense. Their offense is only going to get better. Such a winning culture there in Pittsburgh. The Steelers is who I'm looking at as a potential playoff squad personally.
If Kenny Pickett picks it up, for sure. I mean, of course, the caveat for the Bengals, you already mentioned Joe Burrow, questionable for this game. We don't know how much of this is their head coach kind of playing the whole like competitive advantage game, a sort of thing. If Joe Burrow is going to be missing multiple more weeks with that calf strain, then of course the conversation changes for the Cincinnati Bengals. But even if he's in there at 80, 85%, I mean, we saw him play pretty okay. Took a while to warm up, but eventually kind of sort of got there against the Baltimore Ravens, which have a fairly stout defense. I'm saying it's not over for the Bengals. It's not over for the Chargers yet, in my book.
Statistically, I know the first week was obviously such a bad week for him, but statistically, 2 weeks in, he's like a bottom 5 quarterback in the league. I know that's not going to happen, but if that's how he plays hurt, I mean, not everyone can play hurt. What Mahomes did last year, I know I'm a Mahomes fan, but Mahomes was just out of his world. Playing injured in professional sports is very, very difficult, and some guys can adjust, others can't. And Joe Burrow, I know he's come off an injury before, and he's but after he had all the time to recover, he didn't have as much time to recover this time. Obviously, hindsight 2020, they're 0-2. They probably wish they would have waited more, but you can't really do that in the NFL. So I don't know.
The last small little point that I have on the 0-2 teams is I know you referenced that stat since 1990. We do have a 17th game. We have an extra game this year, which changes the calculus
and an extra playoff team.
And an extra playoff team. So I think those, while those are good numbers, and I think by and large a decent bellwether for determining, how things are going to go. A bellwether? Yeah, an indicator, a leading point.
Yeah, I figured.
All
right, the Casselman vocab for the day.
Of course,
bellwether. Okay, noted.
So that's
I just got smarter.
With those two factors, 0-2 isn't quite the death knell, but it's certainly not nearly as good as being 2-0. Like a couple of surprising, perhaps for some folks' teams. I mean, Commanders are 2-0. You have them as a wild card team.
Yes, I do.
Falcons and Saints, I have them as a division winner and wild card team. So maybe not everybody saw sunshine and roses for some of these 2-0 teams, but certainly a good standing so far. So for the Saints, Falcons, Buccaneers, Commanders, all sub 500 teams last season. Of course, Buccaneers won the division at 8-9 with Tom Brady at quarterback. So, a little bit of an asterisk there, under 500, but made the playoffs. So of these 4 teams, Kamen, do any of them finish above 500 this year? I know that the percentage chances of making the playoffs go drastically up when you start 2-0. I would say none of these teams have necessarily looked dominant, but sometimes good enough cuts it until you figure it out. It's a lot easier to coach after a close or a narrow win than a loss, because you at least have the ability to hang your hat on that W.
Yeah, the stat, by the way, Tom, since 0-2, 61% have made the playoffs that are 2-0. So, I mean, I think for me, the Commanders are the one that I'm going to say are going to make the playoffs as a wild card. That was my preseason pick. I don't see why I shouldn't stick with it. Eric Bieniemy has that offense rolling on all cylinders. Sam Howell seems to be the guy there. Brian Robinson has looked good. If they can get Chase Young healthy on defense, I know it's a big if, but that would make their defense better. I think, the Giants, I know they had the crazy comeback against the Cardinals. I know they're saying Saquon might be back sooner now, but the Giants look a lot weaker in that division. I know they got to play Dallas and Philly twice, but Washington actually beat Philly last year. And always Washington-Dallas is a big rivalry. It's always competitive. I cannot say for sure they'll be 0-4 in those 2 games. And they might go 2-1 against the Giants. So I think Washington has the best odds. I'm going to say they are going to get a wild card spot, but they're not. They're probably not the most impressive of that bunch. For me, it's been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they've been a very impressive team. I know the Bears are bad. I know,
and
but
the Vikings.
The Vikings. I mean, the Vikings game. The Vikings, I think, are not a bad football team. They won on the road against the Vikings. I think Baker Mayfield. It's the prime example of two things: change of scenery and just playing in Cleveland. I mean, gosh, it's tough to play in Cleveland. I don't know what it is. I know Deshaun Watson is coming off an injury, coming off these off-field issues, all these problems. But Deshaun Watson has looked terrible in Cleveland. It's like, can we really judge a quarterback when they played in Cleveland? I mean, come on. And Baker actually won a playoff game in Cleveland against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he was injured the last year in Cleveland when he got forced out. Baker Mayfield has 3 touchdowns, passes, no interceptions. The guy is diving on the field, getting fumbles for his teammates. They love him to death there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was Baker's perfect match in Tampa, but he's looked really, really good. This may sound crazy, but it's not. I think he's a better quarterback than Carr. He's more consistent. I trust him more than Carr. I certainly trust him more than Sam Howell, and certainly trust him more than Desmond Ridder, who can't throw the ball to save his life. I mean, you have Kyle Pitts and Drake London, who look like mediocre guys. I mean, the Falcons, to me, are probably the most fluky start because they went up against the Carolina team. You know, I like Bryce Young, but Carolina has no targets. His first ever start, it was a good matchup whenever you play someone in their first ever start. The Green Bay Packers were out on offensive linemen. Bakhtiari, Christian Watson didn't play. Aaron Jones didn't play. It was a home game. They still won by 1 point. Healthy Green Bay, they lose that game. So I'm not sold on the Falcons by any means. So I think the Saints have a better chance. I think they'll be right there with the Bucs, but the Bucs won the division last year. They still have some talent from that team that, was in the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl like 3 years ago. I know a lot of guys are gone, but Shaq Barrett's there. Baker Mayfield has Godwin, has Mike Evans, who looks incredible right now. He's been flat out balling, arguably the 3rd or 4th best receiver in football right now. Let's not forget Mike Evans.
Statistically, he is, yeah.
Has never not had 1,000 receiving yards in his career. So I think Baker's got the toys. The Bucs have, again, I think that the Saints and the Falcons are off to fluky starts because of the schedule. I think the Bucs are the best team of this bunch. And even though I did pick the Commanders in the preseason to make the playoffs, I actually think the Bucs are the most likely, and I think they're the best team in this bunch. I'm not ready to say they're making a playoff run by any means, but I think they will be in the playoffs. They will be a division winner. Tampa Bay Bucs have looked very impressive for me personally after 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just going to full up front admit I only heard about like a half or 2/3 of what you're saying, because as soon as you said the Cleveland thing, I just went straight to Joakim Noah. You think Cleveland's cool? I never heard anyone say I'm going to Cleveland. So
yeah,
slamming Cleveland, Joakim Noah, Kamen.
Cleveland.
I mean, yeah, like you raise good points. I mean, this is kind of where we're at with the NFC, where there's the elite tier, where right now I actually think Dallas has kind of moved themselves into a full-on 3-team a top tier with Philadelphia and with San Francisco, and then kind of like there's almost like 2 blank tiers, and then because there's everybody else in that,
and then there's the Bears.
Right? And then there's the Bears. Yeah, as far as like the Commanders go, I mean, they still have a tough division. They were up big in Denver, but then kind of led Denver back into it a little bit. So I'm not 100% willing to commit to them, but certainly
they were also down too. That was a crazy game.
They've done well to get themselves in place. They're a little bit mercurial. But that's, also part and parcel of having a talented but inexperienced quarterback in Sam Howell. Well, I think things can even out for that franchise over the course of the season, even as their schedule gets tougher. And then for the Falcons, the Buccaneers, and the Saints, That's all going to be interdivisional play, really, to determine a lot of that stuff. I mean, both Falcons and Saints have beat up on the Panthers so far. So that's one of those things where, as a litmus test, okay, they're at least on par with themselves. But I mean, I firmly believe that, with the Vikings aren't that good of a football team. We certainly know that as presently constituted, the Bears are a not very good football team. And the Buccaneers didn't really do anything to stand out in those games. They did enough to win, and that certainly has its own merits. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they beat the doors off either of these teams. I mean, they let the Bears get within a single possession, for crying aloud, before a questionable play call, leading to a screen pass pick six type of situation is what kind of made that game look bigger than that advantage look bigger than it was with the Buccaneers and the Bears.
Yeah, but it was never in question for me, because wasn't it like 2010 at one point, and then the Bears made it closer to, I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think all of these teams are off to a bit of a quote unquote fluky start.
I agree.
I mean, I a little bit tongue in cheek said Falcons as a worst to first because the NFL seems to have that every single year. I'm willing to stick with that because I think that Arthur Smith and what he's doing with having this run heavy game, it's a little bit throwback. It's a little bit collegiate, but that's kind of what teams do when they need to be just a little bit better than everybody else in their division. They're going to lean on Bijan Robinson. They're going to lean on Tyler Algier. They're going to lean on a low volume, but probably heavy play action passing game where it's just about getting the linebackers to come up just a little bit, make the occasional big play. And you've got players, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, who are physically very talented. We haven't necessarily seen outstanding.
They don't have anyone to throw him the ball. Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota 2.0.
In a division like this, I think the Falcons are going to be just good enough. As of right now, they haven't shown that they're significantly better. They haven't shown that they're significantly worse, though. So I'm going to stick with Falcons and Saints coming out of this division. The Buccaneers, I will say, with what they've done, and again, it's against a couple of teams that I don't think are particularly good, they've shown that they're more than just a 44-45 Tom Brady-led team. I mean, there's still Levante David. There's still, I'm blanking on his first name, but the other linebacker, White, I think it's Devin White.
Oh, Devin White.
You've got Shaquille Barrett, Vita Vea. You still have a really good defense.
They have a really good football team. They have a lot of talent, Tom.
It's just a matter of, Baker Mayfield, not Baker Mayfielding.
They love him there. They love Baker Mayfield. They're obsessed with him. I have not seen a single locker room in 2023 talk up their quarterback more than the Bucs are talking about Baker Mayfield. I don't know if it's like fake or what, but it generally seems like they're obsessed with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly see. There's still plenty of season left to see which one of these teams are going to be able to keep their heads above that 500 mark and perhaps make either win the. I mean, one of these three teams in the AFC or NFC South is going to win the division. We'll see about the Commanders and the NFC East. That is a tough division because two of the teams, we're going to talk about one of the teams in the division, but certainly the Eagles have not played their best football yet. I think they still have plenty of ceiling to go. I'm not concerned about
that
at all, but they are not in this conversation for the most impressive team in the NFL after 2 weeks. A little bit of a positive overreaction, or maybe just appropriate reaction at this point, because we've got 49ers starting off 2-0. We've got the Cowboys starting off 2-0, and by a significant 30-point margin, best point differential in the NFL. And of course, we have the Dolphins as well, who had a bit of a shootout game against the LA Chargers, and then in a kind of ground and pound game against the New England Patriots, found a way to win, even though it wasn't their best or most explosive offensive output. They found two different ways to win two very different games. So, Kamen, for your money, who has been the most impressive team after 2 weeks?
You almost kind of took my argument away from me. You led into it perfectly. I could say transition, because it's definitely Miami for me. 36 points against the Chargers, 466 passing yards, one with the offense, one with the passing game. And then week 2, they allow only 17 points on the road. They force 2 turnovers, 121 rushing yards from Raheem Mostert, who, by the way, Mostert is really fast too. The speed on that team. Mostert, Hill, Waddle, it just, oh my God, it's overwhelming. how much athleticism and speed they have. And they have a top 5 coach in football, at least on offense. Their coach loves to put them in the right positions to succeed. That's just such an impressive team right now for me for Miami. I mean, I think the Niners are very impressive too. 37 over the Steelers, 30-23 against the Rams, which is a Rams team that has looked pretty good 2 weeks in. I mean, they beat Seattle. Seattle beats the Lions. The Lions beat the Chiefs. The transitive property is, messy, obviously. But the Rams seem to be back. That's because Matthew Stafford seems to be back and playing really good. Christian McCaffrey leading the NFL in rushing yards. That is impressive. But I think Brock Purdy missed some throws week 2. I like Brock Purdy. You know that very well, but I'm not as impressed with him as Tua. I kind of expected this from the Niners and Dolphins both. I mean, I have the Niners in the Super Bowl. I have the Dolphins in the AFC title game. The Cowboys, obviously, on the surface, seem to be the obvious answer, but they're not to me because I want to see them do it against someone good. I mean, 40-0 win against the Giants, great. It was rainy, Daniel Jones. They have no targets there. Zach Wilson is an atrocious quarterback. Beating him 30-10, it's whatever. I'm not that impressed by that, honestly. I still am very concerned about Dallas having a second wide receiver, Tom. They had so many field goals they settled for against the Jets. They have a lot of points, right? 40 points, but the first game there was a block kick return for a touchdown. There was a defensive touchdown. And then a lot of their points otherwise are also because, when your offense starts at the opponent's 30-yard line, yeah, that's easy. Mm-hmm. Anyone can score. But their number 2 receiver week 1 was Brandon Cooks, 2 catches, 22 yards. Their number 2 receiver week 2, the running back, Tony Pollard, 4 catches, 37 yards. I was just seeing something on Facebook. We're at this whole cycle where the national media, the Cowboy fans, all get fired up for Dallas. I know they've got the win differential. They've got the point differential, Tom. I still think they haven't played anybody good. The Niners winning in Pittsburgh 30-7. I know it's not a great Steeler team, but I can't think of Pittsburgh ever losing that bad at home personally. Off the top of my head, I know it's happened at some point, but I cannot for the life of me think of it. They dominated the Steelers. They took care of business on the road against the Rams. And the Niners and Dolphins are winning road games, Tom. Road games. They are winning road games. It is tough to win on the road in the NFL. I have been most impressed with Miami because they have found different ways to win. Second most impressed with the Niners. And yes, the Cowboys have been very, very impressive. But settling for field goals, not having a second receiver, I sort of agree, sort of disagree with you. I still think the Eagles and Niners are a half tier above the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are a little bit closer to them than they are. I think they're further ahead of that next tier. I think they're a little bit closer to entering that first tier, but I still look at it tier 1, 1.5 than everybody else. I personally am not ready to put Dallas in the Niners-Eagles tier myself. And I'm going to have to wait a few more weeks because this week they play the Cardinals. I'm sure it's going to look good again. So let's see Dallas play someone before I'm impressed. I do think the Dolphins, I know the Chargers and Patriots are down. They're not as good, but those are still talented teams. They took care of business on the road. Mm-hmm. I think Miami, for me, has been the most impressive. The Niners second, and Dallas third most impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that kind of goes into the Dallas conversation because you're talking about, they don't have necessarily a proven second receiver type of thing. And I mean, I'm going to reserve judgment on their overall passing game once they're actually in a closer game
because they have to pass the ball, right? Maybe that part of it is they haven't had to pass the ball to the second receiver.
They've had very run-heavy, run-positive game scripts so far with big leads over the Giants and over the Jets, which I agree, especially with Aaron Rodgers out, not an especially strong Jets team. So for me, like, I mean, like, how are we defining impressive? I mean, looking at all of the turnovers, all of the big plays that Dallas has made so far, I think by definition, that makes them the most impressive. I mean, you don't just kind of stumble your way into a 60 point differential between, you've put up 70 points and you've only given up 10. That is super duper impressive, even if it is against, kind of middling teams. I mean, certainly the Giants, I think, were a bit overinflated last season, but they were still a playoff team. They were still a decent middle of the road type of team, and came into the season, fully healthy. And that's what the Cowboys were able to do to them. And then for the Jets, I mean, that's one where unfortunately it would have been a much better litmus test, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers had played. But they still showed up and showed out. They still showed up and showed out against a Jets team that has pretty good talent outside of the quarterback position. And again, we'll see what that franchise decides that they're going to do. I mean, it looks like they're going the Zach Wilson route. But again, I just said you moved on from Zach Wilson for a reason with this roster. How much do you want to continue to commit to the season to go all in? We'll see. But just from the standpoint of, I know turnovers and defensive scores aren't necessarily sticky as far as a predictive measure of how good a defense is. The fact that the Cowboys are coming away with them as consistently as they are at least shows the mentality. And of course, Dan Quinn, a phenomenal defensive coach, has them playing really, really well. So for me, they've been impressive enough to put them in the same category as the 49ers, who got off to a strong start as well with their wins on the season over Pittsburgh, over LA. I mean, certainly LA played them a bit closer than I thought, but then again, maybe LA has some better weapons on offense than we anticipated heading into a season where Cooper Kupp is out for at least 4 weeks.
I would have won in fantasy, Tom. But I have them now.
That's something a lot of people needed that second week of proof for him. So I'm going to say Dallas Cowboys slight edge for being the most impressive team so far. But of course, I mean, the 49ers, I expected them to be 2-0 and to be looking as good as they are. Dolphins, a little bit of a surprise because obviously, I mean, I picked the Chargers week 1. And I just threw out that whole stat about Bill Belichick not being, 0-2 since forever ago. I mean, that's one of those things where you throw out because it's not necessarily because of the coach. It's because of the talent and the team that you have. And quite frankly, the Patriots got a pretty tough start with a good Eagles team, with a good Miami Dolphins team as well. So the Dolphins, I think, took care of business. And I think the most impressive thing was how they won against the Patriots, because that clearly was not Tua's best game on offense. That wasn't really anybody's best game, but Mike McDaniel did a good job of doing a lot of outside zone runs and then having Raheem Mostert bust in for the occasional inside zone, like that big touchdown where he went in untouched. That was great play calling and play design by Mike McDaniel. He's phenomenal as a coach. I'm really excited to see how the Dolphins perhaps continue to improve, because again, the biggest knock against them so far has been Tua's health, and we've seen Miami get off to really strong starts in years prior with Tua at quarterback. If he's able to stay healthy, it's going to be exciting to see where their ceiling is, because quite frankly, we don't know where that is just yet.
The AFC title game. That's where I put them.
For you, AFC title game absolutely is where we'll be seeing Miami in the season. But it gets kind of chilly in Missouri, and that could be a one where they fall a little bit short.
Yeah, against KC. Let's go.
So that's going to wrap up our NFL talk. We don't really have necessarily huge head-to-head matchups. I mean, of course, it's the NFL. Every game matters, certainly, but games mattering more than we thought, perhaps, coming out of Colorado. Deion Sanders, prime time, has the Colorado Buffalo at a 3-0 start, which is impressive because I'm in a couple of different fantasy football leagues, and in one, there's a guy who said, hey, I know somebody who works on that team. They have not looked good in practice all season long. This team might not be good enough to win a single game. Whoops. The Colorado Buffalo have certainly come out to a great start, getting a win against TCU, a team that I thought was kind of overinflated at the beginning of the season, Nebraska, and then Colorado State as well. But now they have a huge test. Some would say this is a litmus test game. This is a measuring stick game as they're going 100%. Up against Oregon. They are 21 4.5-point dogs as they head into Eugene. So, Kamen, as far as what you're thinking, this is an impressive start so far, but can it continue against Oregon? And let's just say, I mean, 21 points, it's a huge, huge margin. So are we saying that Colorado has to win this game to continue to be impressive, or will you be impressed if they have the quote unquote moral victory, which is something that players and coaches never want to claim? But as observers, as fans, we can say, hey, if they play Oregon close, that is a sign of, a little bit more legitimacy as opposed to they got run right out of the building.
Yeah, moral victory is a thing, Tom. I believe in it. I think it's, like you said, it helps you build confidence, momentum. I mean, to be honest with you, college football is so unpredictable year in, year out. Mm-hmm. Until you've kind of seen 2 or 3 conference games, it is truly impossible to know. Obviously, I mean, TCU was amazing last year, but they lost a lot of kids. Nebraska's not Nebraska anymore. They're just way downhill. Colorado State's not a great team, although I thought Colorado State's quarterback, if you watch that game, looked really good. I think Colorado State, had a lot of really bad penalties, but their skill position players did play really good in that game. I mean, by the way, that was the most watched 9 p.m. college football game in that window in the history for ESPN. I think it was like their 5th most watched college game ever, I think I saw, and the most watched in the post 9 p.m. window. So prime time's delivering the numbers, the sunglasses, the whole argument with the opposing coach. Well, those sunglasses have now been selling for a few $1 million. Mm-hmm. He's got The Rock. He's got Pat McAfee wearing them on College Game Day. Deion is the real deal. I mean, you see, footage of him hugging his player, then the player ends up getting a touchdown later, ends up performing great. These kids are bought in. They love Deion Sanders. 1 win last year. It's almost a completely different team, by the way, with the transfer portal, which is also what makes college football so crazy, because as someone who actually does love college football, I do follow college, I know, a little bit more closely than you. I get used to hearing the same names over and over. As someone who's covered college football, you're like, this team is back. Right now, as a fan, as a sportscaster, as a person, it is almost impossible to track college football. We've got, the transfer portal, guys going all over the place. We've got all this conference realignment. It is just so hard to really pin down who is who, right? This is 100% a measuring stick. But if you hear some hype, there's some people out there saying that Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, the quarterback for Colorado, who's currently 2nd in the nation in passing yards, Tom Casselman, 2nd in all of college football, he could be the 2nd quarterback taken in the NFL draft. And I'm kind of all for it, because I actually have watched every Colorado game so far. This kid is the real deal, Tom. He can make any pass. He's the classic run to pass, throws on the run. He's got that same Mahomes, Caleb Williams-like vibe. He's clutch in the big game. I know a question I saw on one of the talk shows, Colorado was favored against Colorado State. Was it bad that it was a close game, or was it more that you were impressed they showed up and won a close game? I was more impressed they won the close game. They had the ice water in their veins. Shedeur Sanders, 98-yard drive, like it's no big deal. The man looked like Joe Montana, Tom Brady, John Elway, and Patrick Mahomes in one. I am very impressed with Colorado. Again, I mean, Oregon is just demolishing everyone. They beat Portland State 81-7. Close game against Texas Tech 38-30, 55-10 over Hawaii, who does not have Colt Brennan running through the door anymore. 10th ranked team in the country. I mean, on the surface, my gut says, which, so does my wallet, so does my betting box of the week. Colorado plus 21 seems like a very safe bet. So does over 71 points. So if you're telling me you've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, he's going to show up, he's going to show out. I am all for Deion Sanders, all the excitement he's brought. He's great for football, which, by the way, the Colorado State player that had the big hit on the Colorado kid, the dirty play, he's getting death threats, which is by no means a good thing, just horrible to see. Deion Sanders did speak out against that. So I know a lot of guys want to say that Deion Sanders is starting stuff, but he really isn't. He's not doing that. It just happens when you're in the public eye so much. People are either going to like you or they're going to hate you. But everyone's going to watch Deion Sanders, and everyone's going to be watching Oregon and Colorado. Actually, that's going to be probably a more watched game than Ohio State or Notre Dame, which we'll talk about shortly.
Possibly,
I guarantee you the ratings, Colorado, Oregon is going to beat it. So if Colorado plays Oregon close, 100% the real deal. Will they play Oregon close? Like I was saying, you never know, but I think so. I'll be betting on Colorado plus 21, and I'll be hoping Colorado goes into Eugene, takes down Oregon. And how about in a couple weeks, Tom, we have Colorado against USC, Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders. The Pac-12, man, it's getting fun. Little Pac-12 after dark for the night owls like Kamen Entchev. Sign me up, baby. I am all for it.
Yeah, this is one of those things where is part of the reason that we're paying so much attention to Colorado and what they've accomplished on the field because of their head coach. And the answer is absolutely.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, Deion Sanders, everywhere that he goes, I mean, there's a reason why his nickname is Prime Time, whether it's his playing career where he was in the NFL and he was playing for Major League Baseball.
The World Series and the Super Bowl.
One of the greatest athletes, just period, of a generation, perhaps all time. I mean, he's definitely up in the pantheon if we want to talk about just athletic ability and the fact that he was able to play at the highest level in two separate sports. That's rarefied air, certainly. And of course, he also has a lot of attention for, being on networks, being a commentator. He has a huge, huge following. And so the way that I'm kind of approaching this game and approaching this Colorado season is it's impressive from the standpoint of they were pretty atrocious last year before he showed up.
One win.
Oh, go ahead.
One win.
Yeah. Like they were really, really bad. But now we've got this new age of college football where you've got the transfer portal and you don't have to have kids sit out every single year. So you can actually turn around an entire program a lot faster. And Colorado has done that by getting a lightning rod head coach saying, hey, we're going to pluck you from Jackson State, which you brought to national prominence just by being there, just by being the head football coach. We're going to do that for Colorado. And there's going to be so many kids flocking to this team. It's come together pretty quickly, but this is where I pump the brakes. It has not been against especially good competition. I mean, we look at TCU, they were begging for regression this year where they had
ranked 17th still, 17th going into that game, 2-1, but regression from last year, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't think that they were a particularly special team. Of course, Nebraska, Colorado State aren't phenomenal teams. So I think this is one where if Deion Sanders weren't the coach of the Colorado Buffalo and they were still going into this game 3-0 with all the same wins and everything, would we have as much belief in them having a chance against Oregon? I think the answer is I think the answer is no. So I think that if they're within 2 scores, I guess that would be pretty impressive. If they keep it within, single digits type of thing,
they will. Yeah.
That would be impressive. I don't think that they're going to necessarily. I think this is going to be a game where Oregon is kind of just sitting in the cut saying, okay, yeah, you've got all this attention coming in. You're going to be facing a primo team on the road. And then, of course, with USC heading to Colorado next week, I think really quickly it's still going to be an interesting team to follow just because of Deion and Shedeur and Travis Hunter, of course, who was phenomenal as a football player. There are reasons to continue following this team, but I think by the end of September, the bloom is going to be off the rose for this team.
I don't think so, because I think even if they lose these 2 games, if they're respectable, they'll be 3-2, but then they could go 4-2, 5-2, 6-2. I don't know. I mean, I think to a certain extent, maybe a little bit, but I don't. I mean, look, Tom, Deion Sanders is a coach that the players love. If you see his
Oh,
kids,
absolutely. I'm not
they
denying that at
love
all.
him. No, what I'm going to say is in the next 2 to 3 years, Colorado's going to be a legitimate playoff contender. What do you think about these high school kids, these kids in the transfers portal? What are they watching over there in Colorado? What's happening? It is special. Colorado is going to be a top 5 program, and they will be in the college football playoff within the next 5 years, Tom Casselman, without question, if he stays.
You don't think that maybe Alabama's teetering a little bit? They say, hey, we're going to pay Nick Saban a pound sand and go get prime time in Tuscaloosa.
That would be fun. I was going to say, because I don't really buy the talk to the NFL, because I think he resonates more with young kids. I think I mean, and I'm sure he would be good in the NFL too, because he's a very smart football player. That's something that's not talked about, the athleticism. The man is a super smart football player who clearly understands the game. I'm not saying that he wouldn't be a good NFL coach. I think he would be a good NFL coach, but I think he's the classic guy to mold, the young kids.
Yeah, and
he's the classic leader, the guy with swag that just translates well to the college kids. I don't see, they're like, who do you want to get coached by? Like Deion Sanders, he's the guy that's kind of transcended eras. Because I mean, you and I saw at the very, very end of his career. I actually remember watching him in Washington, of all places. Not the Cowboys, not the Niners, the Falcons, but he's a guy that every generation knows. He is arguably the best corner ever. I think he is without question to me, the best dual sport athlete in the history of sports. Because I mean, Bo had the injuries, but Bo was not nearly as dominant at either sport as Deion was at football. He is probably the best cornerback in the history of the NFL. He's got the second most return touchdowns. Devin Hester has one more. You had a pick sixes, scoop and scores, punt returns. He's got the second most, one less than Hester. I don't know if you remember this, Tom. I don't know how much you've looked into it, but Deion Sanders played wide receiver in the NFL too. He played punt. He was an all-pro punt and kick returner in the National Football League, an all-pro corner. He played receiver. He played baseball. This guy is just, there's just something about
that
Deion
has
Sanders.
Anything to do with Colorado and Oregon.
No.
That's why I'm picking Oregon big. But
I know, but I'm just saying the guy just gets sports. He gets these kids. CU plus 21. Book it.
Well, a game that's going to be considerably closer, at least I think it's going to be considerably closer than a 21-point margin, is what I would say probably the biggest game in any football this week, which is Ohio State and Notre Dame. And it is significant because we've got a couple of top 10 teams. Ohio State is 6, Notre Dame 9. Nice. We've got 2 teams also that really haven't had any good measuring sticks so far. I mean, Ohio State on the road in Indiana, then at home against Youngstown State in Western Kentucky for whatever that's worth. Whereas Notre Dame has played Navy and absolutely took them to school. Tennessee State at NC State, that was the closest game, 45-24, and then Central Michigan. So this one in Notre Dame, I believe, is certainly the biggest game that either team is going to have this season, and definitely has college football playoff ramifications. Kamen, it's going to go down to the wire for me on this one. I might say something on the show that I might change my opinion on our college football confidence pick 'em by the time this game kicks off, because I know Ohio State is favored by about a field goal, give or take half a point, depending on where you're finding that. But that just indicates how close that this game is. I mean, we've got Sam Hartman, the transfer from Wake Forest, having an outstanding season. On the other side, Kyle McCord, I'm not really sure how good of a quarterback he is. He's following a strong lineage, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, for being really good Ohio State quarterbacks. But as of right now, because he hasn't played that great of competition, and also because he plays with a guy who you may have heard of his dad, Marvin Harrison Jr., who some people, I swear, they're putting him in the NFL Hall of Fame, even though he hasn't played a single snap. You've got Travion Henderson, running back as well. So you've got a ton of offensive weapons. So I think Notre Dame has the better quarterback simply because I don't know how proven Kyle McCord is. Is that going to be enough for the Fighting Irish to pull off a mini upset at home against Ohio State? Do you think the Buckeyes are going to continue to roll and we'll be looking really, really intently at that matchup against Michigan to end the season?
Yeah, it's going to be enough. I mean, again, it's early in the season. These teams are different. Neither team has a good measuring stick, so we can't really say for sure, but I'm going off gut. Sam Hartman, who, by the way, is a future player on Sundays, Tom Castle, another great player, fifth-year senior from Wake Forest. He was actually going to go to the NFL draft, but there was some sort of like rumors, and someone said, why don't you just go to Notre Dame because he's got the extra year because of the COVID and everything. He's like, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. And he went over to Notre Dame. By the way, the last 2 seasons at Wake Forest, Tom, 77 passing touchdowns, just under 8,000 passing yards. This season with Notre Dame, 13 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. Kyle McCord is a first-year starter. Sam Hartman is a top 3 quarterback. I mean, he's a Heisman Trophy contender, no doubt about it, in college football. So I'm going to go Notre Dame at home. Again, just the gut feeling. They're at home. They've got the better quarterback. I mean, McCord's getting better. There was the first half against Indiana. He looked really off, but then he got better. But I think that Sam Hartman is the guy here. And the Irish are going to go to 5-0, and they're going to enter that college football playoff talk. And you know what's going to happen. They're going to get in and they're going to lose in the semifinal because it's what Notre Dame does. They don't do well in New Year's Six bowls. I don't think they're a top 3 team in college football, but they might be a top 4 team in college football. So, yes, Irish over Ohio State. I'm a little surprised Ohio State's actually favored. And I mean, technically, it may not be the biggest game either team plays because I kind of look at it. The winner of this game puts themselves in a good position for the playoff, especially if it's Notre Dame. Ohio State obviously still has that Michigan hurdle. But yeah, Notre Dame in a close game.
Notre Dame is going to have USC with a guy who I think is going to be winning his second Heisman in Caleb Williams. So I think I'm leaning Notre Dame as well, but I'm a little bit concerned because college football isn't like the pros where the quarterback has this incredibly outsized level of importance. I mean, look at what Georgia did with Stetson Bennett, who I think across the board was rarely, in the big games, was rarely the better of the 2 starting quarterbacks, but because there was so much else around him, obviously, and his own talent as well, played to great success. For this, I think, I wonder how much we're putting on Sam Hartman to be so much better than everything else that Ohio State can do, because Ohio State has a really strong offensive line. So it's kind of one of those things where is Notre Dame's defense going to be able to hold up? And we've seen them not match up as well against some of the big time programs over the past couple of years, simply because their talent base or their recruiting base is different because of the different academic standards that Notre Dame has. So I think I'm going 50.5%. I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win this game. But like I said, I can flip-flop on this one. I wouldn't be surprised by anything other than a blowout one way or the other. I think this is going to be a really, really close game. I would be shocked if it's a blowout. But it might literally come down to last possession. Can Sam Hartman go up against Ohio State to get the final score? Kyle McCord do the same thing? I think that's the sort of thing it's going to come down to, simply because both teams have looked really strong to start the season, but we just haven't seen it against anybody else who's good to really say, how good is this? It's not like the NFL where these are all the best, even on the bad teams, these are all good players. In college football, you're going up against some guys that, aren't that great. So slight pick for Notre Dame, but I don't feel great either way on that front, which kind of lines up well with how I've been doing in locks of the week. Not that great.
You got to stop fading the Cardinals. You're just talking about everyone in the NFL was good. Stop fading the Cardinals. Now that's what's doing you
They're
in, Tom
just
Casselman.
ticking me off. It's like
don't do it.
The Cardinals feel like the team that, as an organization, of course, the players don't want to tank. The players want to win every single game. But as an organization, it feels like one of those things where it's just like, wait, we don't want to win this game. Find a way to lose. And they somehow do. It's just really, really frustrating because it makes
they'll lose
cover
but
stuff
cover.
difficult.
Just tell me one thing. You're not betting against the Cardinals this week. Please tell me that.
I am not fading the Cardinals this week because that is just far too big a line. What's like 11 and a half, something like that?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Too big to bite off even for me.
Anyway, real quick recap from last week. Dolphins minus 2.5 at the Patriots was my pick. Dolphins winning 24-17. Bears Bucks over 41 points. Correct, because of the Justin Fields pick 6, which they ran the play 3 straight plays in a row. Whatever it was, 2 or 3 in a row. There was also the play where Justin Fields had a wide open receiver and took a sack. I'm sure you've seen it on the internet, Tom.
I saw it live.
Yep. The Raiders plus 8.5 against the Bills. That one I missed. Should have gone with the Bucks minus 2.5. I almost wanted to double down on this game. 2-1 week, 4-2 starts. Man,
not bad.
Like we flipped what we had last year. It felt like I was off to a little bit of a cold start. You were hot early. Actually, kind of the same records the first 2 weeks. 2-1 for me, 1-2 for you. You had the Giants minus 5 at the Cardinals. Giants winning by 3. Cardinals were up. Was it 3 scores in this game at one point? The Giants had a crazy comeback. Not crazy enough to cover, though. This is one that you kind of got barbecued on. We record typically on a Wednesday. This was a Monday night game. You had the Saints minus 3.5 at the Panthers. The closing line moved to 3. So you would have pushed, but you lost. And there was a late score for Carolina, a 2-point conversion, 2017. There you go, Tom. Hashtag bad beat. And then you did go Bucks minus 2.5 against the Bears. That was right on. Bucks winning 27-17. What do you have for us this week, Tom Casselman?
What I have this week looks like, an incomplete entry for locks of the week. I'm going to have to scramble here. One that I feel confident about, Eagles minus 4.5 over the Buccaneers. Like I said, Eagles have not played anywhere near their best football. The Buccaneers have been playing against not great teams. I think that this is by far and away, this is borderline completely different leagues. By far and away, this is going to be the toughest defense that Baker Mayfield has faced so far. And we have seen him many times in years past get a little bit frenetic, get a little bit crazy, lose his head, and make a big play for the other team. I think that the Eagles are going to be able to do enough on offense. We saw DeAndre Swift provide a really nice complementary run game to go with Jalen Hurts in the passing game. So I see big things for the Eagles over the Bucks. Give me the Chargers on the money line. This is only a 1-point spread on Bovada. So I'll, instead of paying minus 110 on the juice, I'll take minus 105, have the Chargers winning on the road in Minnesota. And now this is where I'm scrambling because I only had 2 entries written down. So I kind of have to figure out, where do I want to go from here? Let's see. I don't know if we've heard any news about the Packers and injury updates, but I'll go ahead and take the Packers minus 2 at home. Jamal Williams, I know, is going to be questionable for the New Orleans Saints to play. And the Packers have looked pretty sound so far this season against a not very good Bears team and a we don't quite know yet Falcons team. We also don't quite know yet with the Saints as well. So let's say Christian Watson comes back. Jordan Love has his guy to throw to. It's only a 2-point spread. I don't like picking the Packers and cheering for them to win. I'm just stalling to see if I can find something else really quick that I like a little bit better, but for now, I'm going to say that. I'm going to keep peeking really quickly. I might come back with a third game, Kamen.
All right, Tom. So for the record, all 3 of those games, I think, are 50-50 toss-ups. For the record, just so I have it out there, Tom, I disagree with the Bucks pick. I think the Bucks are going to cover. They've looked great. I disagree with the Chargers pick. Vikings at home again. I'm not saying Minnesota's an amazing football team, but I think you are underrating Minnesota, and I think the Chargers would have no answer for Justin Jefferson. I could be wrong. You never know with this stuff. Not games I'm personally betting on either way because I've went with this betting system this year in the NFL, Tom. Bet less and win more. 2 weeks in, it's working. Instead of picking, 7, 8 games to bet on, I've been picking 2 or 3, sometimes 4, maybe a little in-game action. But I've been up on the NFL in the green, Tom Casselman. So I got to stick with that. Do you have one?
I do have one. So I said last week, playing football against the Chicago Bears, fade the Bears. I think 12.5 is a big line to cover, but go ahead and give me the Chiefs total points, 31.5. Give me the Chiefs over 31.5 points. You can get that at plus money on Bovada, plus 115. So a little plus money Casselman, as I am going to be fading the Bears, and I don't really think I'm going to be regretting that.
Okay. Well, there's one I probably agree with you on. So you'll go 1 and 2 all of a sudden, Tom. I'm also going to fade the Bears because even though I said I'm in the green 2 weeks in betting NFL, I could be in the green even more because I knew they would lose to Green Bay, but I could not bring myself to bet against the Bears, against the Packers, in the off chance they beat Green Bay. I could not do it. Last week I did bet on the over, but I didn't bet on the line. This week, I feel a little bit better about it because, as you know, Tom Casselman, anyone who watches this show knows I'm a Chiefs and a Bear fan. I've got Chiefs stuff back there. I've got Bear stuff back there. Grew up in Chicago, lived in Missouri for 6 years, covered Chiefs football. Big fan of Patrick Mahomes. This time, especially against the other team I love, I can fade the Bears. And I'm going to say it's a big line, and I don't care. Give me the Chiefs minus 12.5. Kansas City's offense has been up and down. Travis Kelce will be healthier this week. Kadarius Toney looked better this last week. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. This is kind of a revenge game for Kansas City for a couple reasons. Mahomes, by the way, was going to get drafted by the Bears if you followed it closely. They kind of let him on and his father, and the Bears did not draft Mahomes. The last time he played the Bears, he was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the teams that could have picked them, and the Bears were the one, I believe, right before the Chiefs. He's going to be fired up. Let's not forget, last time at Arrowhead, they lost to the Lions. They're not going to want to have the home crowd go through that again. And everybody's favorite Bears coach, who, again, he was a mess, but they're all a mess, and the players are a mess. Matt Nagy, the OC in Kansas City. I know that Andy Reid does a lot of the work, but it's kind of a revenge game for him as well. I think it's a get-right game for the Chiefs offense against an abysmal Bears defense. They're going to do great. And Kansas City's defense, by the way, has looked phenomenal 2 weeks in. They've looked unbelievably good. 14 points on defense against Detroit. They had a defensive touchdown. The Lions did 14 true points against the high-powered Lions offense that needed a fake punt run just to convert another drive against Kansas City that ended up in a score. The Lions just put up, I think it was like 31 the week after. The Jaguars, young, high-powered offense, was lighting up the scoreboard week 1. No touchdowns, 9 points against Kansas City. The only way that I lose this one is if there's a backdoor cover. That's the only way. But I think Kansas City minus 12.5. This could be a 20-point win. The Chiefs are notorious for the backdoor cover. I think it's going to be Chiefs by 20 with like 2 minutes left. We'll see. Maybe 17 with 2 minutes left. We'll see if there's a Bears touchdown at the end. But I just don't think this game's going to be remotely close. It's going to get ugly. Kansas City should win maybe by 3 touchdowns, Tom. I'm going to go with something that's been working for me. Miami Dolphins. I picked them last week on Locks of the Week. The week before, I almost picked them, did not end up picking them, but they've been on my, you and I both come up with a list of like 4 or 5 picks. Maybe not this week for you, but there's usually 4 or 5, and I picked 3 of them. Well, Miami was in my lot both weeks so far. Week 1, they didn't make it. Week 2, they did make it. I'm rolling with the Dolphins, -6 against the Denver Broncos. Denver's 0-2. Their defense looked atrocious against, was that the Commanders or the Greatest Show on Turf Rams they faced? I couldn't tell. I got confused with all the points the Broncos gave up. And Miami's defense, by the way, pretty good. Pretty good defense for the Dolphins. Good secondary. They've ran the ball well. They've passed the ball well. They're clicking on all cylinders. Miami -6 feels pretty good for me against the Broncos, who, as you know, there's some you're right about, some you're wrong about. But as we've seen the theme in the show, you want to stick with your preseason picks? I want to stick with mine. I was very high on Miami, very low on Denver. I'm not changing it this week. The Dolphins win by more than a touchdown. Colorado +21 at Oregon. I am sold on primetime. 21 points is a huge spread. Yes, Tom. Yes, they haven't played anybody. Yes, Oregon's the real deal. Yes, it's college football. I have no idea what's going to happen. We're not in conference play yet, but 21 points is a
pretty big,
enormous spread. Shedeur Sanders is second in the nation in pass yards. The great quarterback for Colorado. He's going to keep him in this game. He's going to make plays. I hope Colorado wins outright, but I think they won't win outright. But with 21 points on the spread, give me the Buffaloes +21 against Oregon. I'm going with teams that I support. I'm rolling with my boys. Going to go 3-0 this week in betting locks of the week.
I'm surprised you went with that as opposed to the over, because
I was eyeing that as well.
They're going to be throwing the ball all over the place.
I think it's 71. I'm probably going to bet separate bets on both and then parlay them together. I just don't love doing 2 of the same picks, although I was going to do it last week and I didn't with the Bucks game, but Bucks Bears. But yeah, I agree with you. The over also seems like a very smart play. I've actually bet on Colorado every week. Week 1 and week 2, I won betting on them. Week 3, I had an original bet that was losing, but then I doubled down more money on it. It was when they were down, I want to say, they were down 1 score in the 4th. It wasn't when they were down 11. I think they were down like 3 or 4 early in the 4th or something, Tom. Their money line was like -120. I doubled down on that and actually profited on CU this weekend as well. So go Buffaloes.
All right. Well, trivia, like I said, mine's going to dovetail right into my statement of the week, Kamen. So let's go with what you've got first.
Yeah. So Ronald Acuna Jr., we know he's the first 30 home run, 60 stolen base guy, a guy that's getting a lot of home runs and getting a lot of stolen bases. It was the 12th game here. I think it was yesterday or the other day, the 12th game that he's had a home run and a stolen base in the same game. That is tied for the second most in a season with Bobby Bonds, not Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonds, Barry's father. Only one player has one more game, 13 such games where it's a home run and a stolen base in the same game. Can you name the player?
Someone who's got power and speed.
Yes.
Well, you said Bobby Bonds. My first guess is going to be Willie Mays.
Well, I thought you were going to say Barry Bonds. It's not Willie Mays, and it's not Barry Bonds. I'll give you that one.
Okay. That was going to be my second guess. Well, because Willie Mays, I believe, is Barry Bonds' uncle. I think that there's some sort of relation there with the Bonds and Mays fan. Who else has had a lot of pop, also a lot of stolen bases? This is going to seem off the wall, but how about Alfonso Soriano?
Ooh, former Cub. No, it's not Alfonso. I like that name, though.
Mike Trout?
No. Nope.
He's just great at everything. Not Mike Trout.
So played before those guys.
Okay.
Not too old school, but a little bit old school.
Home run,
There's a clue I can give you.
Base.
I'm afraid he may give it away, but maybe it won't. I would say he's more well known for his stolen bases than his home runs.
Okay. See, all the guys that I think of for stolen bases are guys like Ricky Henderson, Tim Raines, guys that don't necessarily have a ton of pop. Is it Ricky Henderson?
You just said it. It's Ricky Henderson.
Wow.
Yeah, Ricky Henderson.
I didn't know he had that kind of pop.
Games in '86. Yeah, he's got the most leadoff home runs, I believe. Ricky Henderson. Let me pull it up. He had a lot of home runs. I mean, not like nothing 500 or anything, but Ricky Henderson had some pop. Let's see here.
If you said that this player referred to himself in the third person all the time, I absolutely would have gotten that right away.
Okay. Well, that was the clue. The stolen bases more than the home runs.
Yeah.
Ricky Henderson. Yeah, that's a decent amount of home runs, Tom. 297.
Mm-hmm.
That's a decent amount. I mean, he played a lot of seasons, of course, but 297, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Chicago, Illinois' finest. Born on Christmas. Ricky Henderson.
He is an interesting character. I haven't read his book. Howard Bryant, the author, wrote a book on Ricky Henderson, but I followed him on Twitter for a while and definitely seemed like an interesting character, to be sure.
Most stolen bases and runs in baseball history.
So, Kamen, here is my trivia question for you.
Okay.
Can you tell me the quarterback that has spent the most time in the pocket so far this season?
Justin Fields.
It is, in fact, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
This via Carmen Vitale.
Yeah.
Carmen Vitale, yeah, absolutely. And this is something where the Bears can take a little bit of solace for at least one fan that apathy has not yet set in for me. But the Bears need to let Justin Fields cut loose and
run the ball.
Let him run, like not necessarily tell him to run the ball or design runs, but stop telling him to be somebody that he is not. I'm going to invoke another set of names that is going to sound, it's going to guard your ears, Kamen. This might hurt a little bit.
Oh.
But remember Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky? Now, I'm not saying Mitch Trubisky was going to be a good quarterback, but what was his strength coming out of school? Being a mobile quarterback. And yet Matt Nagy insisted, no, you have to play the quarterback position this way. And what are we seeing with the Bears and Justin Fields? We are seeing them try to force him to play the game a certain way, which is just a completely backwards way of thinking about things. A great example, and this is the difference between good and great organizations and bad ones. Look at what the Baltimore Ravens did. They went from Joe Flacco, probably the most statuesque, immobile quarterback that has played the game in recent memory, to Lamar Jackson. And what did Harbaugh do? What did John Harbaugh do? He said, we're going to change our entire offense to fit this player's skill set so that he can succeed and so that we can succeed. There's this guy by the name of Tim Jenkins, former quarterback in the NFL, has his own quarterback academy, and he is a regular on a sports radio station, 670 The Score in Chicago, where he breaks down Justin Fields' tape, and he points out all these things like, they're telling Justin, they're changing his footwork so that he's starting with right foot back and left foot front. He is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal resource. And just to make everything nice and concise, the Bears are trying to change too many things about Justin Fields and kind of telling him, hey, this is how you have to win. Where do we see the Bears offense have the most success last season? It was after they said, we're going to scrap what we were trying to do. We're going to work on Justin Fields' strengths. What are his two biggest strengths? Running and throwing the ball deep downfield, taking big shots. Not every quarterback to win in the NFL has to be a Tom Brady, a Drew Brees, a Peyton Manning. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't win exclusively from the pocket. In fact, some of his biggest and best plays come when he's trying to run and make a play happen. That is where something truly magical can occur on a football field. So when you're taking away some of a player's biggest strengths to try to shoehorn them into something that they aren't, that is not good for the player, that is not good for the coach or the team or anybody, quite frankly. It makes for a very frustrating fan experience. I think the best thing that the Bears can do, unless they want to be picking atop the draft again, and I don't think that they do. If they do, that's an absolute travesty because multi-year rebuilds simply don't happen. They don't work in the NFL.
Bring him on. Let's go.
I mean, I wouldn't I mean, sure. I mean, I'd be happy to have Caleb Williams, but the thing is that I can see a good quarterback. Not saying that he is right now, but I can see from here Justin Fields being a good quarterback in the NFL. I
I
can
don't see
see,
it.
I can see a good to great ceiling in his future if he's allowed and encouraged and schemed to do things that he is good at. Then work in some of this other stuff that folks say that you need to be a win from the quarterback or win from the pocket type of quarterback. I mean, look at what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. Yes, he's a mobile quarterback. Yes, he can run and he can win from the pocket, but that's because you work everything else around him to allow him to do that. You're already starting with Justin Lakes with one hand or perhaps one foot tied behind his back. Cut him loose, let him go. If you're going to fail, at least fail spectacularly in the NFL. This death by 1,000 inflicted self wounds just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, and that's what they need to do. 100%, Tom. You want to put your quarterback in the right possession or position to succeed. I do disagree with you on that. I mean, anything is possible. Yeah, he's got the talent. I don't think Justin Fields is the guy. Look, they can't make him when he has a guy wide open, 15 yards down the field. This guy does not know how to read a defense. He can throw it to when someone's wide open. Ohio State. I think for me, Justin Fields will never be a great player. He doesn't have it. He can play on the best offense. Yes, if you get him an offensive line and the greatest show on turf, he might deliver. But if you put him in an average offense with an average coaching staff, he's going to have some really bad plays, going to have some really good plays. In the end, his best case is average at very, very best, and he's in a bad spot, much, much worse. He simply, look, yes, the Bears have mismanaged him, but he is a football player. He has to show up, and he has to make his own decisions. A quarterback can audible, a quarterback can run around. I think it's a catch-22 because everyone is blaming everyone around Justin Fields, which is fair, but not enough of us are blaming Justin Fields, period. He is not making these plays. Even that screen pass, there's like 4 guys around there. That pick, that was on Justin Fields. It was on the play call, but he can throw it away. You don't throw into a crowd of 4 guys. This guy, for me, Tom, is not it. I've been very low on Justin Fields the last few years. He just because he's got the athleticism and the talent does not mean that he's an NFL quarterback. There is plenty of great athletes. And I also, to an extent, kind of disagree that the NFL believes in this pocket passer thing. I think a lot of the NFL has gone to guys doing both. I mean, how often do the Eagles utilize Jalen Hurts on QB sneaks, on QB runs? How often do the Bills utilize Josh Allen? The Ravens, like you just mentioned, put their whole playbook around Lamar Jackson. I think the NFL as a whole has accepted the dual threat quarterback, and so many of the quarterbacks in the league right now are dual threat. Like everyone's got athleticism. Like, yes, some guys, run more to pass like Mahomes, but even like Burrow when he's healthy, even Justin Herbert, these guys can run around when they need to.
Oh, absolutely.
So the pocket quarterback is kind of a dead thing in the NFL now. I mean, there's some,
and I think that the Bears aren't accepting that yet. That's what I'm saying.
They need to accept it, but I think that even if the Bears manage Justin Fields the best they can, I don't think that he's ever going to be a great quarterback. I think he's going to have great moments, but he is just so prone to stupid passes. He's not a good offensive football mind. He's a great athlete with a great arm, but Justin Fields makes some curious decisions, and he's the one throwing the ball. The coaches can put him in a bad spot. He's throwing the ball. And I think that Bear fans are too enamored with this talent that they're not realizing that he's just not a good quarterback. He's a great athlete. He's not a good quarterback, Tom.
The way that I see it, the comparison I would make, and this is just based on a lot of different things from people who break down film and break down routes and stuff like that. What it feels like is that the Bears are trying to ask Justin Fields to succeed in Spanish. And if you think about when you're trying to talk in another language and you're not quite fluent yet, you have to take half a second to think. I mean, that half a second is all it takes to miss
what the
stuff.
Bears have always done. They've mismanaged their quarterbacks for years.
I'm just saying,
I can't think of a quarterback.
He doesn't have a great football mind, or that he can't comprehend.
He's throwing the ball to the other team.
I think that he is still a good football mind. I don't think that he's just physical talent.
How do you explain the play against the Bucs? The guy's wide open. Like, there's no one even near him.
The explanation on that is that he was looking in the wrong place at the wrong time because his footwork is messed up.
That's the footwork. Okay.
Yes.
That's the QB progression and vision.
Yes.
I'm not buying Justin Fields. Justin Fields.
I'm not selling on him yet. I still think that there's a good player in there.
I'm selling stock now. Sell it quick. I think the Bears probably need to look into trading him. You're talking about Justin, like Kirk Cousins. I would trade him now before it gets worse, while you can still get something from Justin Fields.
If the season continues the way that it is, I absolutely could see them exploring that option and some team taking a flyer on him and saying, "No, we can unlock the potential that's in here." I absolutely could see that too. And if the Bears are that bad for Justin's sake, I certainly hope that he does get a better opportunity, because I think he deserves better. I think he deserves a better opportunity to showcase what he's got.
And I think as a Bear fan, I deserve a better quarterback. So both of those things can be true, Tom. But anyways, speaking of quarterbacks, one guy that, I'm a Bear and a Chief fan, Money Mahomes, let the money splatter. So I think the Chiefs made a great move. They're making Mahomes now the highest paid player from 2023 to 2026. They've restructured his contract. They're going to offer up the ability to do it again in 2026. And a lot of times in the NFL, like, we get so caught up with, like, are athletes greedy? Do they make too much money? But a lot of times of these, I mean, we know they do, but so do other professions. Some professions don't, but a lot of it is about respect. We've got, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow breaking the bank, and Mahomes is just sliding on the highest paid quarterbacks. You do not want to build any animosity towards your quarterback. This isn't a money thing. Mahomes has enough money. We know that. He is the best quarterback in the game. He is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. He might retire as the GOAT when it's all said and done. What the Chiefs did is something they had to do. They had to do it. They need to keep that core together, and Mahomes is the most important part of Kansas City. So them restructuring his deal was a great thing to do. And I just look at Mahomes. I mean, it wasn't a great week one, but again, there was a lot of drops. But I look at the NFL. I look at how many off games Josh Allen has, how Jalen Hurts has had some off games now. Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes injured, won the Super Bowl last year. And it just irks me that we compare guys to Patrick Mahomes. I think he's like LeBron James. He's like Michael Jordan. He's like the GOAT, Lionel Messi. He is simply the best player in the game. And there are certain years where someone could be close, because that guy has a career year where, maybe he's not miles above them. But for the next 10 years, he's going to be the best player in the league for me. No question. Knock on wood as far as injuries. But I think he is no question the guy. And I think that they had to make that deal. And it's just, he is, like, we talk about tiers. I think he's in his own tier at the quarterback position at the current moment. I think Mahomes is the top tier and everyone else is behind him. So as a Chiefs fan, I'm very happy for the move. And the Chiefs organization has shown that they find a way to get guys. They find a way to work around the money. They find a way to be smart, and they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. As long as Andy Reid wants to stay too, they'll be more than fine. And as a Kansas City fan after week one, it's like, are you panicking? I am so impressed with their defense right now. I mean, even Mahomes said it in the press conference. Our defense is playing amazing. They don't even have to be the best offense in the league to win. Just exciting times. I've got my ultimate lows with the Bears and my ultimate highs with the Chiefs as a fan of both franchises. and we get to see them head to head this week, and it's going to be ugly for Chicago. I'll say that much, Tom.
Yeah, I mean,
Messi's
good
back
on.
tonight, by the way.
Oh,
Inter
nice.
Miami. I'll be working in some soccer talk in the coming weeks. What were we going to say?
Absolutely. Well, good on the Chiefs on getting this done because it's a respecting, and this is what I really don't like about the whole salary cap notion is that it forces this conversation of players being greedy, they're taking away from their teammates. Do they care more about getting the bag or do they care more about getting a championship? And quite frankly, the thing that the salary cap has done is that it has excluded the fact that you can try to achieve and should try to achieve both. This is why I don't think a single player is really overpaid necessarily. I think every player is entitled to and should go and get the most money that they absolutely can, because I know this is different positions, but you look at Nick Chubb, that happened to Tom Brady, not the same extent of injury, but Tom Brady one season passing from the pocket has that knee injury. He's able to come back because he plays at a position that allows him to, and the injury wasn't quite so severe, but your career can change in a flash, in a blink of an eye. Even if Nick Chubb does come back and he's healthy and he's able to play, nobody's going to give him the size of contract that he would have gotten if he had otherwise stayed healthy. So that's why I think for, all this quarterback conversation and, we laud Tom Brady for giving money back or for not taking as much as he could have. And I think, well, that's just a travesty. He should absolutely, every quarterback, every football player should make every last bottom cent that they can. And it's simply the fact that there is a salary cap in place that then turns into, well, is he valuable enough? Is he taking too big a piece of pie? I really hate that conversation. So good on the Chiefs for making sure that Patrick Mahomes is at the top. The one thing where I'm a little bit surprised, and maybe we'll see this at some point, is are we going to see contracts at some point have a clause in them that ties the quarterback's compensation to increases in the salary cap space? Because we're never going to get rid of the salary cap. The owners are never, ever, ever going to allow wage suppression to go away as far as that goes. But do we see it where it's like, hey, Patrick Mahomes, you're now going to get an X percent raise every time the cap goes up to keep you commensurate as one of the top paid quarterbacks? Or perhaps, dare I say, you're going to get a stake of ownership, perhaps, for signing this contract. I don't know how that factors in with salary cap structure or whatever. But we see it in other sports. Are we going to see that at the NFL at some point? Certainly the only position that would see that would be the quarterback. And Patrick Mahomes is in that rarefied air where he could get some.
Well, what you're saying makes sense, but you say it to the quarterback. What do the other positions say,
I mean, I think the other positions know, like, I'm not going to get a percentage of ownership as far as this mega
I'm
deal
talking
or
more
whatever.
About the raise percentage than the ownership, rather. Like, if they're going to raise the quarterback salary, are you going to raise everyone's salary, or is it just going to be the quarterback only?
It would be specific quarterbacks would get that sort of clause in their contract.
So which ones? What specific quarterbacks? Like,
guys, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. I mean, perhaps someday Caleb Williams.
That? Is it all pro quarterbacks or?
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, are you saying that teams would have to do it, or is that a league thing? I'm just confused how it would be enforced.
I'm saying that it would be an individual contract. So it's like, Patrick Mahomes, we're going to give you this much money, and in there, there's going to be a clause that stipulates if the cap goes up 5%, so does your compensation, type of thing. That's what I'm saying. It would be a specific clause for an individual quarterback, not necessarily a league wide.
You know what makes me think of this?
So good on the Chiefs for making that happen.
You know what I'm thinking of right now as a Chicago sports fan? Just take a gander. Chicago sports contract in similar situation. It's an old school player, a legend on probably the best Chicago team we've ever had.
Probably Michael Jordan would have.
Well, I'm thinking Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen, when he had the contract, he signed a long-term contract. The salary goes up, and he's no longer even the second highest paid player on the team. And the Bulls didn't restructure his contract. That was part of the split on the Last Dance '98 team. Just makes me think of that situation, because the NBA salary went crazy. It was like Jordan went from making, don't quote me on these stats, they're not exact, but he went from making like $3 to $4 million to making like 25 million.
It was like
Something like
30
that.
something. The last couple of years of his career, he was making 30, $35 million
And that was like
on that.
literally about 10 times more than he was making on the previous contract.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because the media rights deal exploded, and I'm not going to get into it
but
about
then
Jared Reinsdorf. I don't want to.
Scotty didn't get the money then, and that created this animosity with Reinsdorf, with Kraus, and yeah, the rest is history. But hey, still won 6 championships, but they could have won 7 or 8. They're not going to win 10, but they might have had one more year from that team. Maybe Jordan doesn't leave in 94, 95. I mean, anyway, that's all hypothetical, but made me think of the Scotty Pippen contract situation.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree, Tom. I like that idea. Looking forward to talking a lot of football next week. We'll be recapping some of these games. You better believe if the Chargers and Bengals lose, I'll be all over you. But
I think I get a pass if Burrow's injured. Just putting that out there.
Yes, you got a flyer. That's fair. So going to be a lot of fun next week. We'll see if Colorado is in fact the real deal as well. And next week we'll talk MLB down the stretch. Chicago Cubs in the midst of a
dicey
potential playoff appearance or not. So that'll be fun to talk about. Bills Dolphins, I think, on the docket next weekend. That'll be probably the biggest game of the NFL season so far. Looking forward to all that and more, Tom. We'll see you next week.